Okay, it's October 21st, 2014, and this is my interview with my mother for archival sake, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so go ahead and state your full name.
How many names? I've got
Here.
Georgia Ann Thomas Tifft Boswell.
Okay, all right. And say your birth date.
June 13th, 1949.
Okay, and where were you born?
In St. Alexis Hospital in Bismarck. I am not sure the address, but it was on 15th and Thayer.
All right. Oh, is that where you were living at the time, or is
Where
it?
Mom and Dad were living when I was born, yeah.
Okay, all right.
The house is still there. It still looks exactly like it ever did.
All right. So, who were your parents?
Georgia and John Thomas.
Okay. And George's full name was?
Georgia Grace.
Georgia Grace.
Gallup Thomas.
Gallup Thomas. Okay, she was a Gallup. Grandpa's full name was?
John. I think it was Joseph Thomas.
Yeah, Joseph, yeah. All right. Your mother's birthday?
Same as mine. June
Yeah.
13th, 1914, excuse me.
1940. And Grandpa's birthday?
This was August 15th, let's see, I think it was the 16th, because Agnes's was on the 15th. August 16th, 2009. 1909.
All right.
Oh my.
All right. Tell me a little bit about your mother.
She was a hard worker. I remember how hard she worked all the time. She had 5 kids and she worked from sunup to sundown. If she was watching TV, she was sewing or mending or embroidering or whatever. And she ironed everything from the underwear to the sheets to everything. And she was very, she wasn't a very compassionate person. You had to really tough it up. And, she didn't feel sorry for people real easily. I imagine she was brought up that way herself. So, but yeah, very loving mother, very awesome cook, and kept her house impeccably neat and not perfectionist, but nice and neat. And liked nice things like china and crystal and silver, and liked to entertain, loved to dance. She was a good partner for my dad.
Do you have a favorite memory of your mother?
Huh. I don't know that I could pick out one particular. It's just that all our birthdays were celebrated together because we were on the same day, the same name, and the birthdays were always really special. Seeing her with her grandbabies when they started coming along, and those babies, whether they were the highlight of her life. Seeing her dance polkas out on the floor with my dad, those were really awesome. I can't think of anything, one particular thing.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your dad.
He was very sociable. He smiled easily. Wasn't around much. He had a business and he worked very, very hard. He'd only had an 8th grade education and he made the best of it. And he liked to go on vacation and fish. He liked to go out hunting pheasants with his friends, and even my mother hunted pheasants. And He enjoyed dancing immensely. They would have parties in the basement, and all their friends would come, and they'd put on the record player and have dance to their heart's content. And he enjoyed drinking, but I never saw either one of them drunk ever. And he didn't discipline us. She did all the disciplining until we became teenagers. As soon as we started lying, then he took over the discipline. And he was very, very stern. So, but very, very hard worker. And he and I clashed a lot. He didn't like what I did, and he told me about it. And we clashed a lot. But I think all his kids clashed with him except for Jim and Johnny. David and Rick and I were kind of, we clashed.
Yeah.
You want to come sit with me?
So you may as well introduce us.
This is Jasper. Oh. Give me kisses.
All right. Do you have a favorite memory of your dad?
Well, I remember when we went on vacation, a not so good memory was that he'd have a glove compartment full of cigars. We'd smoke cigars the whole way. And in those days, he only drove about 50 miles an hour to get to the lake in Minnesota. And it took a long time, and us kids were dying in the back seat while he smoked his cigars. But he would sometimes take me down to the restaurant with him on Sunday afternoons, and I'd run around, and he would cut meat in the basement, and I just had the run of the place. And sometimes when we were on vacation, he'd take me out in the boat fishing, just him and I. And I don't think he ever let me fish that I can remember, but I watched him, and then he'd take me in the cleaning house, and I'd watch him clean the fish and hit the bullheads with hammers and kill them and then clean them. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was good one-on-one time with him. My parents weren't the type that told you that you were loved or that you were hugged, but I think you felt it because you were well taken care of.
I'm going to see if I can pick your brain a little bit here. I remember at Grandma and Grandpa's 50th wedding anniversary, you got up and all the kids were getting up and telling stories about their parents, and you got up and told a story about your dad, about a certain gift that he had gotten you. Do you remember at all what I'm talking about? Something that...
Was it the big doll?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Tell what you remember about.
I've forgotten about that. I just remember getting this big 3-foot doll for Christmas that I wanted really, really bad, and I got it. Did I tell more?
Yeah, you told more at the anniversary. You had said that for some reason, and I don't remember why it was, but I remember you saying that you didn't think you were going to get it. You'd asked for it or something, and maybe you'd been told no, and but he ended up buying it for you.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember that. It's kind of gone by the wayside. But yeah, I'd forgotten about that doll. That was pretty important to me.
Yeah. All right. So let's see what you can remember about your grandparents. Now, on your mother's side, I know
I
her.
was 2 when she died.
Okay.
So I don't remember anything.
Okay,
I just
and
have seen pictures of her holding me.
okay, and he died when Grandma was little,
Mom was
so
6 months old.
yeah, so you didn't know them at all. Okay, all right. So then, Grandpa's parents.
Very little memories of Margaret and Peter. Germans from Russia. They spoke German. And I remember going to their little house on 13th Street, and they had a garden, a huge, huge garden, and they were always working out in the garden. And we'd go in their little house. I think the house was so small, it had a little kitchen with a bathroom and a living room and a bedroom, and that was it. And I remember going in there and having a drink or something, but the next memories I have is I don't remember my Grandpa Peter dying, but he died of a heart attack. And then Grandma had diabetes so bad that she had to go live with Johanna and her family. And she lost her leg to diabetes, so she was in a wheelchair. She was confined to the bedroom. We'd go over there once a week to visit as a family. And she spoke nothing but German. And I was scared to death of her because she didn't speak English. And I'd peek around the door, the bedroom door at her. And one day she looked at me, and she went like this. And I peeked around a little more. I didn't know what she was going to do, but she went over to her dresser and she opened up the drawer. And she brought out this little baby doll, about so big. And it had a pretty little dress on it. And she gave it to me. And I treasured that for many years because it was from her. But that's the last memory I have of her. And she lost her other leg to diabetes and died. So very little memories of that.
Okay. That's good. Tell us, let's see. Oh, and I wanted to mention, you mentioned Johanna, and that was Grandpa's sister, just for the record. So, tell us who your brothers are.
Johnny. Well, Jim was oldest. He was 15 years older than me. He was born 34, right after the folks were married. And when he was 6, David was born. And the next year, Johnny was born. A couple of years later, Rick was born. And then 5 years later, I came along.
Okay. And what was life like as a family with your parents and your brothers? What was life in the Thomas house like?
You mean the whole?
Yeah, the whole family. I mean, did everybody get along? Did you have a lot of fun together? What was life like in the Thomas house?
From what I remember and what the boys told me, I asked my brother Rick recently. I thought maybe he was jealous of me because he was the youngest for 5 years. And I asked him about that. And I said, you know, what did you think when Mom came home from the hospital with me? And he said, I was out on the curb playing with my toy soldiers, and the taxi cab came up. Dad couldn't even bring her home from the hospital, and she came home with the baby. And he didn't think much of it, I guess. And he wouldn't really give me any more details about what his feelings were about this new baby. And he said, I remember when you were a year old, Mom had the crib outside, and you were outside in the crib, and this bully that was in the neighborhood came running up, and he was throwing rotten eggs. And he was throwing rotten eggs at the house, and he threw one and hit you in the crib. And he said all 4 of us went tearing after him. And I don't know, he didn't tell me if they caught him or not, but he said they were very protective of me, evidently. But I don't have memories. I just know the pictures that I've seen of myself when I was like 2, 3 years old out in the driveway with my baby buggy, and I always had a kitten in my arm, and I'd put it in the buggy and play dolly with the kittens. And So we must have always had kittens, but I don't have much memory until I was 5 when we decided, Dad built a house in Highland Acres, and we sold our house, and the day we were moving, I remember jumping up and down in the back of the pickup yelling, "We're moving to a new house." I was telling the world about it, and the rest of my memories are pretty much at the house in Highland Acres. But I don't know what age I was, but my brother Rick started beating the hell out of me. When I started gaining weight, I think when I was 6, started first grade, I started gaining weight. He teased me unmercifully about my weight, and he was always beating on me. He'd take me down and pretend to spit in my face and just do terrible things to me. And I never could figure out why. And I always wanted to be with him. I mean, he was 5 years older than me, so I suppose he was 10 or 11 years old. Didn't want his little sister tagging along after him, and so yeah, I seemed like I got beat up all the time by Rick, but where the other boys were so much older. Jim, when I was 5, went off to the Navy, so he wasn't even around, but Johnny always took care of me. He always bought me, even when he was a little boy, he always bought me presents on birthday and Christmas, and always watched after me. I remember going into the field with the boys when they were out in the prairie up in Highland Acres, and there were always barbed wire fences, and I went through the barbed wire fence and cut my leg, and so Johnny had to help me back through the barbed wire fence and took me home, get bandaged up, and he was always watching out for me, and he pretty much did that all his life. But David, I don't remember a relationship there at all. And so, yeah, we got along, so to speak.
All right. Tell me about the family's faith.
Well, they were very, very strict Catholics. Mom was a Lutheran, and when she married Dad, she changed to Catholic. And so we always went to church on Sunday, and we went to parochial schools that paid good money to send us to grade school and high school to get a Catholic education. We always had to sit very still and be very quiet, or we'd get it when we got home if we didn't sit still and be quiet at church. Christmas Eve, we'd always have to go to midnight mass, no matter how tired you were. You went to midnight mass, and we had a big family Bible, but it only sat on the coffee table, and nobody ever looked at it or read it. Except for me, I would sit at the table and look through the colored pictures. I loved doing that. And but yeah, they were strict Catholics, and pretty much rested on Sundays. Went to church and had a big meal on Sundays and rested. Am I forgetting anything? Just,
All right.
we had our first communions, and we had our catechism, and we had our confirmation, and all the things that we should have. I really appreciate the fact that they raised us to have respect and reverence for the things of God.
Okay. Tell us a little about your teenage years.
I was an ugly duckling. And I started gaining weight when I was 6 years old, just like you did. And they teased me so bad at school, and I had no friends. Once in a while I'd have a friend, but not much. And I'm amazed when I see a picture, a friend that I ran into, Susan Kirkmeyer. She showed me a picture that she had of the second grade of our class, and I looked so miserable in that picture. My parents never bought class pictures, so that's the first time I think I saw that, but I looked so miserable in that picture, and I thought, what in the world was going on in my life that I could be so miserable at 7 years old? And, so that kind of surprised me, but, yeah, I remember when I was a little girl, when we went to school at Cathedral, and the church was right there, and I'd go in, and I'd sit down at lunchtime because I didn't have any friends to play with, and I'd talk to God, just sit with you and talk to God during lunchtime, because I was lonely, and I evidently saw him as my Father God at that time also. But I continued to gain weight. I think when I was 12 years old, I weighed 175 pounds. And for 5'3", 12-year-old, that's pretty heavy. And so my mother took me to the doctor, and she asked him to give me a diet pill or something, and so he did. And over the summer, I lost 40 pounds. So I looked really good when it came time to go back to school. And I remember we had to have uniforms. I was in junior high, 7th and 8th grade, and they decided that the junior high should wear uniforms. So my mother had to sew these uniforms, and thank God they were a smaller size. But the kids were pretty surprised when I came back in the fall and weighed so much less. And so that helped immensely my going into high school when I was 14 and I graduated from junior high and went into St. Mary's High and started high school. It's just like a blossom. And boy, did I discover boys. I mean, oh, you wouldn't know that I had 4 brothers. But, yeah, and the attention I got from them was greatly needed because of the years before, I suppose. But, yeah, I got pretty wild. I got in with the wrong crowd, and I was going out and lying to my parents, and wasn't supposed to date, and I did everything I shouldn't have done. Had a girlfriend that they didn't approve of it. Her parents didn't approve of me, so we snuck out, saw each other, and did all the things that teenagers do, and had a good time. But my dad, he changed drastically when I started lying, and I remember when my brothers, I don't remember Johnny ever getting beaten by my dad, but I remember David getting beaten by my dad, and I remember Rick being beaten by my dad when they started lying, when they got to be teenagers. And the same thing happened to me. My mother usually took the belt to us when we did something we shouldn't have. Dad never disciplined us, and all of a sudden, as soon as we got teenagers and started lying, he would start beating us around the head. It was horrible. It was horrible. I get so angry, and scared the hell out of me. But it wasn't scary enough to quit lying. So, But, yeah, it wasn't, I'll never forget the time a boy came over to my house. He walked all the way out to Highland Acres in the snow. It was a cold, snowy night. I don't know if somebody gave him a ride or what, but he came out to my house. And he called me on the phone, and I said, my dad was home. And I said, just wait a little bit, my dad's leaving. So my dad left, and he must have saw him leave because he came to the door, and I let him in. And we talked for a little bit at the door, and I don't know, he might have been there 15 minutes or something. And then he turned around and left and went back down to the corner and was standing on the corner in the cold and snow. And my dad came home and he saw that guy on the corner. He evidently suspected something was going on because he didn't go to work. He came back. And he came in the house and started beating the hell out of me. And he said, why did you let that young man stand out there in the cold? I thought it was because I had lied, and here it was because I hadn't been nice to the young man, I guess. He really tore into me that time. And so I didn't have guys over anymore. When I met Chuck when I was 16, and they seemed to accept him. I guess because I was 16, maybe they figured I could date, but yeah, they had no problem with Chuck. He wasn't Catholic, though. That surprises me. But,
Well, that was kind of going to be where I was going to lead to next, so tell us a little bit how you met him.
My girlfriend, Jean, that I wasn't supposed to run around with, she had a boyfriend by the name of Terry Watson, and he was Chuck's friend. And so they introduced me to Chuck, and we had a wonderful 16th summer together. Went swimming in Missouri and went, driving Maine, and just had a really fun summer together. And she and Jerry, I don't know, I think they broke up and went their own way, but we continued to see each other. He would walk over to my house. They lived about a mile away, and he'd walk to my house. And my parents seemed to like him. He seemed to be accepted. Until he got stranded at my house in March of 1966 in a blizzard for 3 days. And I got pregnant. So, yeah.
See, now I didn't know that.
You didn't?
I didn't know that. That's how that happened. No. That he was stranded at the house.
Yeah,
No.
he had to stay there. It was the blizzard of 66, a 3-day blizzard. It was horrible. But yeah, he was there when it hit, so he had to stay. And that's not when I got pregnant. I got pregnant in like January. But that was just, like I said, he was stranded there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't long after that blizzard that I knew I was pregnant. So.
All right. So, what happened when you found out you were pregnant?
Well, I didn't get my period, so I just told my mother I didn't get my period. Something. She said, did you do something to make your not get your period? I mean, she hadn't talked to me about sex or anything, and all of a sudden she asked me, did you do something? I said, yeah. She just cried her eyes out. She was mortified, and that night I went to bed and I heard her telling my dad. And he got so angry and he hollered and then he cried. That was pretty horrible. I don't think I'd ever heard my dad cry before. But then they got Chuck's parents and them. We all got together and they said, "Are you in love?" And we said, "Oh, yes." Of course we're in love. So they said, "All right, we'll help you get married." It took us April 1st on April Fool's Day to Mound City, South Dakota, to a little courthouse right across the border in South Dakota, and had a very uninteresting wedding. Bought me a new dress and got married. And we lived with, let's see, I think we lived with we lived with Chuck's parents first for a few months. And then when it got closer to Ricky being born, then we moved in with my parents. So that I didn't know anything about taking care of a baby, so I suppose she figured she needed to teach me everything. But yeah, we were living with my parents when Ricky was born on September 29th, 66.
So why did you go to South Dakota to get married?
Evidently you couldn't in North Dakota.
Huh.
So you had to go across the border to South Dakota for us to be able to get married, even though they signed for us.
Okay.
I didn't ask questions. We were just kind of like pawns in their hands at the time because we had to.
So, okay, so you lived with my dad's parents for, what'd you say, a couple months or so? And then you went and lived with your parents. During that time, before Rick was born, what was the marriage like?
Oh, wonderful. I mean, let's see. Chuck was working for McCarney Ford. He was washing cars, got a job. We both had to quit school, of course. And we did have an apartment for a short time. Got an apartment. It's a basement apartment on 16th and Boulevard, or 16th and Boulevard, yeah. And we had more fun. I'd call my mother up and get recipes, and we'd sit in front of the TV and eat fudge and popcorn, and just a couple of kids having a good time while I continued to grow bigger and bigger. But yeah, things were very, very good. I'm enjoying being married.
Okay. And your parents and his parents were accepting of things, or?
Yeah, they vowed that when we got married, they'd help us out.
Okay.
To be able to make it. And so, but they insisted that he get a job right away, and we both had to quit school. And I think he got his GED pretty quick. I don't think he waited too long to get that. And yeah, it was hard at 16 to have a job.
Okay. But so you were living with your parents at the time Rick was born?
Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit about what it was like when Rick was born.
You mean the actual birth?
Well, no, just like how did it affect you? How did it affect him? You
I
know.
was still a 16-year-old. I mean, well, I turned 17 in June.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't. I was a 17-year-old, but I was just a kid. Trying to. My mother showed me how to do everything with him. In those days, they had cloth diapers, of course, and you know, they bought the bassinet and the crib and everything that we needed, and between my parents and his parents, bought the baby supplies and stuff. And I was so lonely for for companionship or girlfriends. I didn't have anybody because I quit school. And I'll never forget calling my neighbor girlfriend, Bobby Joe Dorothy, on the phone, and I hadn't contacted her since I had gone with Chuck and got pregnant. And I called her up, and Ricky was sitting on my lap, a little baby, and I said, "You remember me?" And yeah. And I said, "I got a baby now." Her parents wouldn't allow her to associate with me because I got pregnant out of wedlock and was 16. So, nobody wanted to associate with me except my girlfriend Jean. And her parents, we had pretty much had to sneak out. And once I had a baby, there was no sneaking out anymore. So, yeah. Chuck was the only friend I had.
Where was Rick born at?
They
Okay. Was my dad there when he was born?
No, they didn't let husbands.
They didn't let husbands be there, huh? Oh, wow.
You're alone with a nurse, pretty much.
Okay.
You don't, the relatives couldn't come in at all.
Okay.
Not after the baby was born. And they put you in a room, and then people could come in and see you.
So, how was my dad with the new baby?
Like a 17-year-old boy would be with that new baby. I mean, probably scared to death of him. I don't know. I don't remember that we talked about it, but, we have pictures of him when he was 17 holding, him, but I don't remember that. I'm sure it was all new to him, having a baby at that age. It was new to both of us.
So then how long did you stay living at your parents'?
That I cannot remember. I bet I was probably there most of the winter, because Chuck went from job to job. And gosh, I don't remember apartments. I don't know, maybe it's just my memory, but the first apartment I remember, there must have been others before then. I remember moving into Freeman and, Lucille's basement apartment underneath their house just before you were born, in '69. And you were born when we lived there. But I don't remember where we lived from '67 to '69. Couldn't have lived with my parents all that time. We must have had an apartment, but I just don't have memory of it.
All right. Let's speed ahead in '69 then. Would you describe the marriage as still happy at the time that I was born?
Well, he was neglecting me an awful lot. He had a little thing when Ricky was a year old with my friend Jean. And so that kind of put a damper on things and ruined my friendship with her for about 6 months until I forgave her. But then I got pregnant in '69, and you were born in January. And I was not being tended to well. He was busy. He was working at Sweetheart Bakery at that time. He got a job at Sweetheart Bakery. I remember that. But I remember how miserable I was. Really miserable. And then we decided to move to Minneapolis. My brother David and Jane and Rick and Kathy were in Minneapolis, and they said how nice it was and how the jobs were easy to find and stuff. So we packed up and moved, the four of us, to Minneapolis. Trying to remember which area. It was Brooklyn Park or someplace like that.
So did being
No, New Brighton. Yeah, New Brighton.
okay. So did being in Minneapolis make anything better?
That was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Worst thing we could have done, because when we moved down there, Jane and David said we could stay with them. We slept on the floor in the living room. And we had left the kids back in Bismarck with the grandparents because we didn't have a place yet. And David and Jane fought terrible, just terrible. And anyway, we got an apartment, and then we got the kids that came back. And I think he was working at a bakery down there too. He probably transferred from Sweetheart down to Minneapolis. And I remember David and Jane and Rick and Kathy, we'd get together at each other's houses and have dinners and watch wrestling. Wrestling on TV was the big thing in '69. Everybody watched wrestling. Oh my gosh, I got so sick of wrestling. It was such a production in those days. But, yeah. And then you got spinal meningitis, and that blew everything down.
All right, so tell us about that. What happened?
Well, I was working, and I don't remember where I was working. I had a job, and Chuck had a job, and David and Jane were babysitting. When we worked. I don't know how they were able to babysit and work too, but they were babysitting. David would come over and get you and take you to their house. Maybe Jane was doing babysitting while David worked or something, but and then I'd go to work and we'd pick you up on the way home. And you got sick and weren't feeling good with fever and stuff, and David came and got you one day, take you to their house, and he ended up taking me to the hospital because you got worse. And so I didn't work. I stayed at the hospital for 3 days. They had you on ice. They shaved your head and put IVs in your head and had you on ice. And you were pretty much not responsive for 3 days. And being it was the bad kind of spinal meningitis, they thought you were going to die. But I prayed through and came through, thank God. But yeah, I made a lot of promises those 3 days. And after you got sick, we just said the heck with this, and we went back to business.
So now what was
Not a good move.
what was the condition of the marriage by that point?
Well, that was in, I suppose, 71. We ended up getting divorced in 72. It must have been pretty bad. I know when we came back, we moved into a duplex on 23rd Street. And Chuck was working at that time at Dakota Communications, trying to, fixing radios and stuff. And he was very involved in ham radios and stuff like that. And I don't remember where I was working, but that's what he was doing. And we tried, to keep things good, but it wasn't going very well. And by the time you were 3, spinal meningitis, and we moved back to Minneapolis, got an apartment and jobs. So yeah, you had just turned 3 when we decided to separate.
So what do you feel like ultimately broke the marriage?
Well, because neither one of us knew how to be married. We were 16 when we got married. We were just kids. And he decided he didn't want to be married anymore, and he had a couple of flings with other ladies, and I would have stayed committed and married the rest of my life to him if he had wanted to, because I was committed, but he wanted something else.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to take a break there because I am just about, my memory cards are just about full. So we'll stop there for now.
What do we do, an hour?
Just over 45 minutes.